The laughingstock. Commander Eliza Reeves stood with her arms crossed, watching through the observation deck as the maintenance crews pointed and laughed at her new command. The Phoenix hung awkwardly in its docking cradle, a bizarre amalgamation of salvaged parts and experimental components. Where other ships in Earth's defensive fleet boasted sleek lines and symmetrical designs, the Phoenix looked like it had been assembled by someone with only a vague understanding of spaceship aesthetics and access to a junkyard. "They're calling it the Flying Trash Can," said Lieutenant Marcus Chen, appearing at her side. His uniform was pristine despite the early hour, but dark circles under his eyes betrayed his late night reviewing the ship's unusual systems. "I heard worse," Reeves replied, her jaw tightening. "The cosmic mistake. The budget disaster. Admiral Hernandez's favorite is career-ender. Yet here we are," Chen said, his lips quirking into a small smile. "Yet here we are," she agreed, turning away from the viewport to face the central planning table, where holographic schematics of the Phoenix hovered. The ship had begun as a desperate project, Earth's resources dwindling under the crushing taxation of the Axelarian Empire, which had arrived in human space 50 years ago, claiming to be benefactors and guides to the stars. That facade had quickly given way to the reality of occupation, with the reptilian aliens systematically stripping Earth and its colonies of resources while installing puppet governments. The Phoenix had been built in secret using whatever materials could be scrounged, designed by engineers who had been deemed uncooperative by the Axelarians and removed from official projects. It was ugly, uncomfortable, and theoretically revolutionary if they could get it to work. "Systems check complete, Commander," announced Dr. Savita Rao as she entered the room. The physicist had been blacklisted by the Axelarians after questioning their scientific guidance too persistently. "The gravitational distortion drive is stable, but I'm still seeing anomalies in the energy signature that I can't explain." "Dangerous anomalies?" Reeves asked. Rao shook her head, her brow furrowed. "Not dangerous, just strange. The energy doesn't dissipate according to standard models. It's almost as if—" She was interrupted by the station's announcement system. "Attention. Axelarian diplomatic vessel approaching docking bay 3. All station personnel observe appropriate protocols." Reeves exchanged glances with Chen and Rao. Appropriate protocols meant staying out of the aliens' way, offering assistance if requested, and accepting any treatment without complaint. "Let's go see what our overlords want this time," Reeves said, her voice falsely bright. They made their way to the main concourse, where they joined the small crowd of humans gathering to receive the Axelarian delegation. The alien ship connected to the station with precision, its sleek, predatory design a stark contrast to the Phoenix. The airlock cycled, and 3 Axelarians stepped onto the station. The aliens stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to electric blue under the station lights. Their elongated skulls housed 4 eyes, 2 large primary ones, and 2 smaller ones set higher on their foreheads. And their mouths were filled with needle-like teeth. They moved with the confidence of conquerors, which they were. The lead Axelarian, wearing ornate armor that marked him as a high-ranking official, surveyed the gathered humans with obvious disdain. His gaze stopped on the observation window that framed the Phoenix in its dock. "What?" he asked in the sibilant accent typical of his species. "Is that?" The station administrator hurried forward. "Just an experimental vessel, Overseer Vasix. A research project using recycled components to test new propulsion theories." The 3 Axelarians approached the window, their expressions shifting from curiosity to amusement. The smallest of them made a hissing sound, their version of laughter. "Humans playing at spaceflight," Overseer Vasix said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It resembles the refuse heap behind my dwelling." The other Axelarians joined in the hissing laughter, and several humans, those hoping for favor, laughed nervously along with them. Reeves felt her nails dig into her palms. Chen placed a warning hand on her arm, but his own face was tight with suppressed anger. One day, Rhea whispered, so quietly only Reeves could hear her, "They won't be laughing." The Axelarians moved on, still making occasional comments about the human junk pile as they proceeded to their meeting with the station leadership. Reeves and her officers returned to the Phoenix, passing more snickering maintenance workers on the way. Back aboard their ship, the crew was busy with pre-flight checks for the test run scheduled for the next day. Despite being considered failures or troublemakers by Earth's official space administration, each crew member was brilliant in their own way. The perfect team for an imperfect ship. In the engine room, Dr. Rao was running more diagnostics on the experimental drive, muttering to herself as she studied the readouts. "Still seeing those anomalies?" Reeves asked, joining her. "Yes, and I think I understand what they mean now," Rao said, excitement creeping into her voice. "Look at this." She pulled up 2 energy signature models on her display. This is how a normal ship's drive appears on sensors. The image showed a bright, well-defined energy pattern. And this is us. The second image showed a ghostly, diffuse pattern that seemed to shift and blur even as they watched. "I don't understand," Reeves admitted. "Our drive doesn't just bend space like we thought," Rao explained. "The uneven configuration of our ship and the way we've had to jury-rig the components creates a harmonic resonance that affects how our energy is perceived by external sensors." Chen leaned in, studying the display. "You're saying we're harder to detect?" "Much harder," Rao confirmed, her fingers flying across the controls. "And if I make these minor adjustments to the drive output," the already faint energy signature on the display dimmed further, becoming barely visible. "We could be nearly invisible to standard scanning systems." The 3 officers looked at each other as the implications sank in. "The ugly design," Chen said slowly. "The asymmetrical hull. The cobbled-together components. They're actually creating an energy diffraction pattern that makes this possible," Rao finished, nodding rapidly. "Our biggest flaw is actually our greatest strength." "They laugh at our flying trash can," Reeves said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "But they can't see it coming." 3 weeks later, the Phoenix hung in space, engines silent, lights dimmed, as an Axelarian patrol cruiser passed less than 2 kilometers away. From the bridge, Commander Reeves watched the massive alien vessel through the viewscreen, so close she could make out individual weapon ports along its sleek hull. "Status?" she asked quietly, though there was no way the Axelarian ship could hear them. "They're scanning this sector now," reported Lieutenant Zoria Novak from the sensor station. The young officer had been relegated to the Phoenix after hacking into an Axelarian database, supposedly to fix a critical error, though everyone knew her curiosity had been the real motivation. Standard sweep pattern. A small smile played across her face. "They have no idea we're here." The discovery they'd made during their first test flight had been refined and improved in increasingly bold trials. First in the outer reaches of the solar system, then at the border checkpoints, and now deep within Axelarian-controlled space. The harmonic frequency from our drive creates a blind spot in Axelarian scanning systems, Rao had explained during that first breakthrough. "It's like we're broadcasting on a channel their receivers aren't tuned to pick up." Chief Engineer Hoshi Tanaka had spent days fine-tuning the effect. "It's not perfect invisibility," he'd warned. "If they're looking directly at us with optical sensors, or if we move too quickly, they might notice something. But to their automated systems, we're barely a ghost." Now, watching the Axelarian ship glide past without slowing, Reeves felt a thrill of triumph. The ship that had been mockingly called the Flying Trashcan had become humanity's secret weapon. "They're moving out of sensor range," announced Chen from the tactical station. "No change in their alert status." "Take us in closer to the station," Reeves ordered. "Standard observation pattern." The Phoenix moved silently toward the massive Axelarian command station, orbiting the gas giant Jupiter. According to official records, it was merely an administrative center coordinating mining operations in the outer system. But intelligence suggested it might be something far more significant. As they entered close orbit, the truth became clear. The station bristled with weapons emplacements disguised as communications arrays. Hangars that supposedly housed mining shuttles were actually launching bays for warships. And most disturbing of all, a massive device was being assembled on the far side of the station, a weapon of some kind, large enough to target entire planets. Are they planning to attack Earth? Chen asked, staring at the sensor readouts in disbelief. No, Reeves said grimly, studying the intercepted communications Novak had managed to decode. Not Earth. Look at these coordinates. The target was Proxima Centauri, home to the Meridians, another species that had been guided by the Axolarians. Unlike humans, who had grudgingly accepted their role as subordinates, the Meridians had recently begun to resist. They're going to make an example of them, Reeves said quietly. Show what happens to species that don't stay in line. We have to warn them, Rao said. Reeves nodded slowly, an idea forming in her mind. We'll do more than warn them. Lieutenant Novak, get me everything you can on that weapon. Dr. Rao, I want to know if we can use our energy signature to disrupt its targeting systems. Chen, plot a course for Proxima Centauri that avoids all known Axolarian patrol routes. As her crew hurried to their tasks, Reeves stood at the view screen, watching the Axolarians move about their station, confident in their absolute power and completely unaware of the battered, cobbled-together ship observing them from the shadows. Laugh while you can, she murmured. 2 days later, as the Phoenix prepared to jump to Proxima Centauri, they received an encrypted transmission from Earth. Admiral Hernandez's face appeared on the screen, his expression grave. Commander Reeves, your mission has changed. Return to Earth immediately for reassignment. Reeves frowned. Sir, we've discovered critical intelligence about an Axolarian weapon FAT. That's an order, Commander, Hernandez interrupted. The Axolarians are demanding we turn over all experimental vessels for safety inspections. They specifically mentioned your ship. He couldn't quite hide his grimace at the word. The Council has voted to comply to avoid penalties. Reeves looked around at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt. With respect, Admiral, I think we'll be experiencing communication difficulties for the foreseeable future. Hernandez stared at her for a long moment, then the ghost of a smile touched his lips. As I suspected. Very well, Commander. I never had this conversation with you. Your ship was lost during testing. Tragic. All hands presumed dead. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, Hernandez said quietly. Just make it count. The transmission ended, and Reeves turned to her crew. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it seems we're officially dead. Opinions. I've always wanted to be a ghost, Chen said with a grim smile. The Axolarians specifically asked about us, Novak pointed out. They must suspect something. Which means we've already gotten under their scales, Reeves said. Good. Set course for Proxima Centauri, maximum stealth. It's time to show the Axolarians what the flying trashcan can really do. As the Phoenix vanished into the darkness of space, Commander Reeves couldn't help but smile at the irony. The ugly, mocked vessel that no one had believed in was about to change the course of galactic history, and the Axolarians wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. The ghost in the void. The journey to Proxima Centauri took 8 days, longer than necessary, but the Phoenix zigzagged through empty regions of space to avoid Axolarian patrol routes. Commander Eliza Reeves spent most of that time reviewing what they knew about the Meridians, a species of bioluminescent humanoids who had been among the first to be guided by the Axolarian Empire nearly a century ago. They've been under Axolarian control twice as long as we have, Lieutenant Chen explained during a briefing on the ship's small common area. But they've maintained a strong cultural identity and recently began passive resistance, work slowdowns, information control, small acts of sabotage, which the Axolarians now plan to punish with planetary bombardment, Reeves said grimly. Dr. Rao, what have you discovered about their weapon? The physicist pulled up a holographic schematic. Based on the sensor data we gathered, it's a gravitational focusing array. It creates a localized distortion that compresses a planet's crust at specific points, triggering massive earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Not technically a weapon of mass destruction by Axelarian definitions, Chen noted bitterly. Just a terraforming device with unfortunate consequences if used on inhabited worlds. Can we disable it? Reeves asked. Not directly. It's too heavily guarded, Rao said. But I've been thinking about our ship's unique energy signature. The same harmonic resonance that makes us invisible to their sensors might disrupt the precise gravitational calculations their weapon requires. She brought up a series of complex equations. I believe we could create an interference field that would render the weapon inoperable, at least temporarily. How temporarily? Asked Novak. Long enough to evacuate the Meridian leadership, hopefully, Rao replied. But there's a catch. We'd need to be extremely close to the weapon when it's deployed. And the interference would make us visible to Axelarian sensors. Silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. So to save the Meridians, we have to sacrifice ourselves, Chen said finally. Not necessarily, Reeves said, a plan already forming in her mind. Lieutenant Novak, you've been working on those signal jammers. How's that coming along? Novak brightened. Actually, I've made significant progress. Using the same principles as our stealth system, I've developed jammers that can create false sensor readings. I was going to suggest using them to create decoys. Perfect, Reeves said. Here's what we're going to do. As they approached Proxima Centauri, they detected the Axelarian fleet already in position around the Meridian's homeworld. 15 warships, including the massive command carrier that housed the gravitational weapon. They're preparing for deployment, Chen reported, studying the tactical display. Weapon will be online in approximately 6 hours. Have they detected us? Reeves asked. Negative. We're still invisible to their scanners. Good. Novak, launch the probes as planned. Tanaka, prepare the drive for maximum interference output. 4 small probes detached from the Phoenix, each programmed to mimic the energy signature of different ship classes, mining vessels, transport ships, even an Axelarian patrol craft. As they scattered in different directions, Novak activated their jammers. Probes active, she reported. Creating interference patterns now. On the tactical display, false signals began to appear, confusing the orderly pattern of the Axelarian fleet. Almost immediately, 3 patrol ships broke formation to investigate. Phase 1 complete, Reeves said. Now for the hard part. Take us in, Mr. Chen. The Phoenix glided silently toward the massive Axelarian command carrier, using the confusion caused by the decoys to approach undetected. They were within 5 kilometers of the carrier when alarms sounded. We've been spotted, Novak called out. They're locking weapons. Evasive maneuvers, Reeves ordered calmly. Activate the interference field, Dr. Rao. Rao's fingers flew over her console. Interference field active. The weapon's targeting system should be scrambled. The Phoenix shuddered as the first Axelarian energy beams struck its shields. The little ship twisted and turned, its ungainly appearance belying remarkable agility in combat, another unexpected benefit of its unusual design. Shields at 60%, reported Chief Engineer Tanaka over the comm. We can take a few more hits, but not many. We won't need to, Reeves said. Look. On the view screen, the massive gravitational weapon on the Axelarian carrier was powering up, its emitter arrays glowing with purple energy. But instead of focusing into a coherent beam aimed at the planet, the energy pulsed erratically, creating rippling distortions in space around the carrier itself. It's working, Rao exclaimed. Their weapon can't establish a stable targeting solution. The Axelarian ship began to shudder as its own gravitational weapon created unpredictable distortions in the space around it. Several smaller vessels nearby were caught in the effect, their hulls buckling under the strain. Time to leave, Reeves said. Get us out of here, Chen. With pleasure, Commander. The Phoenix spun away from the chaos, accelerating toward the edge of the system. Behind them, the Axelarian command carrier continued to struggle with its malfunctioning weapon, several sections of its hull now visibly damaged. "They're powering down the weapon," Novak reported, and sending out a distress call. Reeves allowed herself a small smile. "Set course for the dark side of the fourth planet. We need to make contact with the Meridians before the Axelarians regroup." Hours later, in orbit around a barren, rocky world on the outer edge of the Proxima Centauri system, the Phoenix rendezvoused with a small Meridian scout ship. The meeting had been arranged through encrypted channels, using communication frequencies the Axelarians considered obsolete. The Meridian delegation that came aboard consisted of 3 individuals, their translucent skin glowing with patterns of blue and green light that shifted with their emotions. The leader, who introduced herself as Elder Linar, regarded the humans with cautious optimism. "You have done what we thought impossible," she said, her voice melodic despite the translation device. "You struck at the heart of the Axelarian fleet and survived." "Barely," Reeves admitted. "And we've only delayed them, not stopped them." "Yet you have given us hope," said Linar. "For decades, the Axelarians have convinced subjugated species that resistance is futile. You have proven otherwise." "We need to work together," Reeves said. "The Axelarians will return with another weapon, or simply overwhelm your defenses with conventional forces." Linar nodded, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to a determined yellow. "We have prepared for this possibility. Beneath our cities lie vast shelter networks that can house our population for years if necessary. What we lack is the means to fight back." "That's where we come in," Chen said. "Our ship's stealth technology could be adapted to your vessels." "And we have something to offer in return," said another Meridian, introducing himself as Tavik, their chief scientist. "We have studied the Axelarians longer than any other species. We know their weaknesses." Over the next several days, human and Meridian crews worked together, sharing technology and intelligence. The Meridians provided detailed schematics of Axelarian ships, highlighting vulnerable points in their design that standard tactical analyses had missed. In return, the Phoenix crew helped the Meridians modify their small fleet of maintenance vessels with stealth technology. During this time, the Axelarians returned in greater numbers, establishing a blockade around the Meridian homeworld. But they did not immediately attack, instead broadcasting demands for the surrender of rebel elements and the mysterious ship that had interfered with their operations. "They don't know who we are," Novak said, monitoring the transmissions. "They're calling us the Ghost Ship." "A fitting name," Reeves mused, "especially since we're officially dead." 2 weeks after their arrival in the Proxima Centauri system, Reeves called a meeting with the Meridian leadership. "We can't stay here indefinitely," she said. "The Axelarians are bringing in reinforcements daily. If we're going to act, it needs to be soon." Elder Linar agreed. "Our intelligence suggests they are assembling another gravitational weapon. This one will likely be shielded against your interference technology." "Then we need to strike first," Reeves said. "Not just here, but across multiple systems simultaneously." "How?" asked Tavik. "Our modified ships are few, and the Axelarian Empire spans hundreds of worlds. We don't need to hit them everywhere," Reeves explained, "just at specific pressure points." She activated a holographic display showing a map of nearby star systems. "Based on the intelligence you've provided, these 5 locations are critical supply and communication hubs. If we can disrupt them simultaneously, we can create confusion throughout this entire sector." "Even if we succeed," Linar said, "it would only be a temporary setback for the Empire." "Yes," Reeves acknowledged, "but it would buy us time to spread this technology to other resistance groups. The Axelarians maintain control through the belief that they're invincible. We need to shatter that myth." The plan they developed was audacious. The Phoenix would lead a small fleet of stealth-modified Meridian ships in coordinated strikes against Axelarian infrastructure. Meanwhile, representatives would be sent to other subjugated species with the technical specifications for the stealth technology and evidence of the Axelarians' vulnerability. As preparations reached their final stages, Reeves received an unexpected communication from a nearby system. The message came via a method so old the Axelarians no longer monitored it. Radio waves modulated in a pattern developed by Earth scientists centuries ago. The sender identified themselves only as a friend, but the content was explosive. Detailed intelligence about Axelarian fleet movements, security protocols, and most importantly, the location of a secret research facility where the Empire developed its most advanced weapons. It could be a trap. Shen warned when Reeves shared the information with her senior officers. Possibly, she agreed. But it contains details only someone with high-level access would know. A defector, suggested Rao, or another species with inside information, Novak added. The message used human encoding, but that doesn't mean a human sent it. After much debate, Reeves decided to investigate the research facility. If the intelligence was genuine, it represented a target far more valuable than any supply depot. The Phoenix departed the Proxima Centauri system quietly, leaving the Meridians to finalize preparations for their part of the operation. The journey to the coordinates provided in the mysterious message took 3 days, during which Reeves had ample time to consider the possibility that they were flying into a trap. The facility, when they finally located it, was hidden in the asteroid belt of an unremarkable star system with no habitable planets, the perfect location for secret research, far from prying eyes. It consisted of a central structure built into a large asteroid, with smaller modules extending outward like the spokes of a wheel. No external defenses that I can detect, Chent reported as they approached. No patrol ships. Either it's extremely well hidden, or it's a trap, Reeves finished. Take us in slowly. Be ready to jump out at the first sign of trouble. As they neared the facility, a small airlock on one of the outer modules cycled open. A single ship emerged, not an Axelarian design, but something else entirely. It was roughly spherical, with a translucent outer hull that revealed glimpses of complex machinery within. I'm detecting a life form aboard, Novak said, sounding puzzled. But I've never seen readings like these before. The strange vessel approached the Phoenix, then stopped a kilometer away. A communication request came through on the same obscure frequency as the original message. When Reeves accepted the transmission, the view screen filled with an image that none of them were prepared for. The being that gazed back at them resembled nothing so much as a jellyfish suspended in a clear fluid, with dozens of delicate tendrils extending from a central body that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns reminiscent of, but distinct from, the Meridians. Greetings, survivors of Earth, the being said, its voice surprisingly melodic despite coming through a translation device. I am Salter, last scientist of the Novae. We have much to discuss, and very little time. What followed was a revelation that changed everything they thought they knew about the Axelarian Empire. The Novae, Salter explained, had been among the first species conquered by the Axelarians, nearly 1,000 years ago. Unlike most subjugated races, they had not been put to work in mines or factories, but in laboratories, their natural aptitude for theoretical physics making them valuable researchers. They did not mock our ships, Salter said, a note of bitterness in its translated voice. They stole them, along with all our technology. What you know as Axelarian advancements are built on the forced labor of a dozen brilliant species, including the weapon they plan to use on the Meridians, Reeves guessed. Yes, a Novae design, perverted for destruction, rather than the planetary healing it was intended for. Salter's tendrils rippled in what might have been agitation. I am the last of my kind in this facility. The others were disposed of when they refused to continue work on weapons of mass destruction. You've been sabotaging their research, Rao said, understanding dawning on her face. In small ways, for many years, Salter confirmed. But recently, I detected your ship's unique energy signature, a harmonic pattern that reminded me of early Novelli experiments. When I learned what you had done at Proxima Centauri, I realized the time for subtle resistance was over. The research facility, Zoltar revealed, housed not only weapons development, but also the central database for all Axelarian military operations in this sector of the galaxy. With access to that database, resistance forces could predict fleet movements, identify vulnerabilities, and coordinate attacks with unprecedented precision. I can give you access, the Novelli scientist said, but we must act quickly. The facility's regular supply ship will arrive in less than 12 hours. If we are discovered, the Axelarians will purge the database and relocate their research. As the Phoenix docked with the research facility, following Salter's guidance to avoid security measures, Reeves couldn't help but reflect on the strange turn of events. The ugly, cobbled-together ship that had once been the laughingstock of Earth's fleet was now the spearhead of a multi-species resistance against the galaxy's most powerful empire. And the Axelarians still hadn't seen them coming. Empire of Ashes. The central database of the Axelarian Research Facility contained far more than military intelligence. As Lieutenant Novak worked to extract and decrypt the files, with Saltar's guidance providing access to systems that would have otherwise remained impenetrable, the true nature of the Axelarian Empire revealed itself in megabytes of cold clinical data. They'd been doing this for thousands of years, Novak said, her voice hollow as she stared at the display. Finding emerging species, guiding them, then draining them of resources and knowledge before moving on. Commander Reeves leaned over her shoulder, scanning the files. And all this time, they'd been presenting themselves as benevolent mentors to the galaxy. A lie as old as their empire, Salter said, its translucent body pulsing with angry red lights. When a species is no longer useful or begins to resist too strongly, they either crush them into submission or engineer a natural disaster to reset their development. Like they planned for the Meridians, Chen added grimly. Precisely. The Novelli were among the first to discover this pattern, which is why they eliminated most of my kind centuries ago, keeping only a few as research assets. Salter's tendrils curled inward. The Axelarians have no true technological ingenuity of their own. They harvest it from others. Dr. Rao, who had been studying another set of files, looked up with sudden excitement. That explains why our stealth technology works against them. Their sensor systems are all based on stolen designs that follow consistent mathematical principles. Our ship's accidental harmonic resonance falls into a blind spot they've never needed to address because no one has challenged them for so long. And it's not just our stealth technology, Novak added, pulling up new files. Look at this. They've cataloged anomalous energy signatures from a dozen different species over the centuries. Each one represents a potential weakness in their systems. Reeves felt a surge of hope as she scrolled through the data. We need to get this information to every resistance cell in the sector. If each species understands how their unique technologies might exploit Axelarian weaknesses, we could coordinate a simultaneous uprising. Chen finished, a fierce grin spreading across his face. They worked tirelessly for hours, Novak and Salter extracting the most critical data while Rao analyzed the technical specifications of Axelarian defense systems, identifying vulnerabilities. Engineer Tanaka, meanwhile, prepared compressed data packages that could be transmitted via the obsolete channels the Resistance had been using. Supply ship approaching, Chen announced finally, checking the facility's external sensors. We've got 30 minutes before they dock. We have what we need, Novak said, securing the last of the data transfers. And I've left a little surprise in their system that should activate when we're safely away. Zoltar led them back to the docking port through maintenance tunnels monitored only by automated systems that the Novelli had long ago learned to fool. As they prepared to depart, Reeves turned to the alien scientist. Come with us, she urged. You don't have to stay here anymore. Zoltar's body pulsed with gentle blue light, My physical form is adapted to the special environment in my laboratory. I would not survive long in your vessel. The Novali's tendrils waved dismissively. Besides, I can be of more use here, continuing to sabotage their research and monitoring their communications. It's too dangerous, Reeves argued. When they discover the database has been breached, they will suspect an external hack. Saltar interrupted. I have covered our tracks well. And in the chaos that is coming, they will have more immediate concerns than one aging Novali scientist. After a moment's hesitation, Reeves nodded. She clasped one of Saltar's tendrils gently in her hand, an improvised handshake between species that had never met before. We'll be back, she promised. When this is over, we'll find a way to help you.